What's up, guys? This is Chris here, and today we're going to be talking about 7 things that you really need to know about shotguns. Now, shotguns are definitely a useful tool, don't get me wrong. They are extremely good at a lot of things. Number 1, they are great at hunting. Number 2, they are very versatile in their use. They can use many different shells for many different purposes, and yes, for some people, they are phenomenal home defense tools. But I guess the question you have to ask yourself is it for you? And today we're going to be going over reasons why it might not be for you and why you might actually be better off with a different option for home defense. Now, shotguns certainly do have a lot of pros in the home defense market. They are extremely powerful, they are very scary, and they're pretty affordable as well, but they come with a lot of caveats that are particular to the shooter. So first thing I want to get into is the fact that shotguns are a little bit heavier and a little bit longer than your average rifle, or especially your average handgun. Now, it depends on, again, who you are, but sometimes shotguns can be a little bit unwieldy. Now, not everybody that uses a shotgun for home defense is going to have a 14-inch Remington 870 SBS. A lot of times, successful home defenders have used 28-inch barreled 12-gauge duck guns, and they do work, but they are difficult to maneuver, especially within structures. Now, where it gets really difficult is if you're not built like me, and let's say you're built like my wife, who's 5'2" and barely half of what I weigh. And when that is the case, holding a gun out for a very long time, particularly in a home defense situation. A lot of people, when they think home defense situation, they think, I'm going to be clearing every rooms like Navy SEALs. A lot of home defense situations are essentially a person holding up shop in a room on 911 with a gun pointed at a door for minutes or even sometimes an hour. Now, if that's the case, you might want a smaller gun, or at least use that gun and rest it on the bed and point it at the door with all your kids and everybody behind you. Now, especially if you're going to go all Navy SEAL crazy, a 28-inch, a 20-inch, or even an 18-inch barrel on the shortest available shotguns that you can buy on the market are still 2 inches longer than your average 5.56 gun. Now, 2 inches may not sound like much, but it makes it a little bit more difficult. But where it really comes in is the weight. The weight of shotguns can be a little bit heavier out front than your average rifle, and just holding that up for a long period of time can be relatively difficult.
Oh my God. Oh, I am a little bit.
So maybe a lighter gun like a 8-inch pistol caliber carbine, or maybe a 14.5 AR-15, or even a 11.5 AR-15 pistol variant would be a lot better for somebody like my wife, who just simply doesn't have the upper body strength to hold on to that for a long period of time, especially if you compare it to your average handgun. Now, I know a lot of people dismiss handguns for home defense, but if it is easier for you to use and it is easier for you to get shots on target, that's all that matters. The caliber doesn't matter if you don't hit your target. If you can't hold the gun up to point the gun, you're not going to be hitting shit. Now, the second thing that kind of leads into that is going to be recoil. And the reason why it leads into it is not because of what you think. You think I might say because of faster follow-up shots, and in which case you'd sort of be right. But the reality of heavy recoil is that people don't train with things that aren't fun.
Oh my God. I don't know if I can do this, I'm not gonna lie. Nope.
So if you have that 14-inch short-barreled shotgun, that Remington 870, and you use federal flight control buckshot for home defense, but you don't train with that ammunition, A, you don't know if your gun works or not, and B, you're not going to be very good with it. Most people I've noticed that err on the side of shotguns for home defense generally aren't very well trained, and that's a real problem because a shotgun is an expert's weapon. If you're talking about a gun with heavy recoil, limited capacity, it's heavy and unwieldy in close spaces, that takes a lot more training. And yes, you can use one, don't get me wrong. If you gave me a Benelli M4, I'd be very, very happy. However, I've shot many of them in my life. And when I bring people out to the range that have not shot a lot of shotguns, they look miserable. They look like they can't control the recoil because they don't know how to push pull, they don't know how to keep the gun in their shoulder pocket, and they don't know how to stand to control that recoil. Now, not only that, but they don't train with it at all, so they don't know the ins and outs of their gun. Like, they don't know how many rounds they can fire before they have to clean it. They don't know how to shoot the gun correctly without short stroking the pump. They don't know where the safety is on the gun in the middle of the night when you can't see. All those things become intuitive when you shoot thousands of rounds to your gun, and that's easier to do with less recoil, and that adds into my first one. It's easier to do if the gun is comfortable and fun to shoot as well. If, let's say, your 5'4" wife had a choice between a X-Star EP9, which weighs 3.5 pounds, she can load the magazine really easy, she can put the Glock mag in, and she fires it at the range, and that's fun. Or a Benelli M4 with buckshot that makes her shoulder hurt every time she shoots.
I actually don't think I can even finish this. Ow! My poor shoulder.
And she doesn't train with it, she's just going to be better with the X-Star because she knows how to use it, she knows how to load it, and most importantly, she can put the bullets where it counts. Now, the third thing I talked about a little bit, and that is going to be only on pump shotguns, and that's going to be short stroking the pump. Now, short stroking the pump is the most common malfunction I see with shotguns. Pump shotguns are extremely reliable, and when you see your average YouTuber or firearms instructor talking about pump shotguns, that's exactly what they'll say, because they probably have as much or more time on them than I do. I grew up with shotguns, I grew up with pump shotguns, I know how to pump the damn thing. I've done it 100,000 times, but if you haven't, it's difficult to do under stress, a lot like a lever action rifle. It's easy to go 3/4 of the way out, stroke it back in, and now you have a malfunction when you really don't want to. And if you add the first two, the recoil and the heaviness and the lack of training, now you're gonna have a malfunction that you literally can't clear because you don't know how. And that just adds on the list of reasons why you might not want this gun. Now again, all that can be fixed with a lot of training, but if there's easier platforms out there for you to use and you're just not gonna do it, then shy away from the pump shotgun. If you don't mind the weight and you don't mind the recoil, but you just don't like the pump, well, semi-automatic shotguns like the A300, 1301, or Benelli M4 are great options as well. Now, reliability issues that even the M4 can't solve are the plastic shells. Now, plastic shells have always been kind of a point of contention in the gun community because a lot of people say there's no issue, a lot of people say that there is, but there have been some studies that talked about shell deformation over time. If you leave your gun loaded for a year or even two, sometimes those shells can deform under spring pressure and they can cause malfunctions in your gun, whereas brass cased ammunition will not. Now, I've never experienced that personally. I've never seen that in real life, although I thought I might touch on it just because I figured somebody in the comment section would, so you might as well know from me. Another thing that I've heard is spring pressure in the magazine tube, although theoretically that shouldn't be a problem, at least for a few years. So if you run an 870 or a Mossberg 500 and you're worried about your spring pressure, they're like $5, just replace it. Now, another issue with all of shotguns, but this is a little bit more of an issue on pump shotguns, is going to be mounting of accessories, particularly a weapon light. I would rather have a Glock 19 with a weapon light than a shotgun without one for home defense, because identifying my target is extremely important. It's the difference between shooting a guy who's there to rob you and kill you, or accidentally shooting your drunk uncle who wandered in at 2 in the morning because he didn't know what house he was at. And you have to know your target, you have to be aware, and you have to identify them. And you can have a handheld light by the bed, which is a great option. You can have light switches, which is another great option. Lights are great. But what you probably should have is a mounted weapon light to the gun. Because if you're scared and you're freaking out and you just grab the gun, you still have the light because it's on the gun. That's the same principle as if you're going to have extra ammunition. You might want to have one on a shot shell carrier on the side of the gun or on the stock, because if you're scared and you just grab the gun, now you have extra ammo and you have a weapon light. And you're never going to know what situation you're going to need the gun in. And most likely when people break into your house, especially home invasions, they happen at night. And at night it's dark, so have a light. And it's just easier to mount weapon mounted lights on an AR-15 or a Mini 14 or an AK platform, for example, and especially easy on a handgun. Whereas on a pump action shotgun, generally you have to buy an exclusive forend, or you have to screw in some sort of Picatinny rail or some crazy shit. And then even when you do have shotgun mounting options, like maybe on the A300 or the 1301 or the new Benelli M4, usually it's in a position that's uncomfortable to use with your hand, so it's difficult to use the on and off switch anyway. So overall, it's just easier to operate ARs and handguns in the dark, in my personal opinion. Now, as far as red dots and stuff go, a lot of modern shotguns are tapped for a rail on the top of the shotgun, but sometimes they don't come with one, whereas pretty much every AR you buy these days will have a rail that you can mount it to right away. So just a little bit easier. Not impossible, but easier. Another con of shotguns is going to be limited capacity. Kind of. So most shotguns usually hold between 5 and 8 rounds, depending on which one you get. And I would consider that enough. That is not as many as, let's say, a 30 or even 40 round magazine that you can get in an AR or maybe a Glock fed carbine, or honestly, just your standard Glock 17 can have a 33 round +1, which is a great capacity. It gives you a lot of chances to hit the intended target. And it gives you a nice warm feeling that you're not going to lose the fight for lack of shooting back. That being said, if you consider the average buck buckshot round is around 9 pellets. Technically, you actually have 45 rounds in the gun. You're just shooting 9 at once. So you have a lack of shots, but not necessarily a lack of capacity, so accuracy has to be even more paramount. And this is where I sort of lead to the lack of capacity. So you have 5 shots, but you have 45 pellets. They don't spread like they do in the movies. A lot of people who think they use shotguns for home defense, oh, I use the spread so I don't have to aim. But the reality is you usually only get about an inch of spread per yard. If you figure that the average home defense shooting distance is around 5 yards, that means you're shooting a 5-inch pattern roughly, which is about the size of your fist, which means you definitely have to aim and you definitely have to hit your target and you have to be a good shot, which leads all the way back to you not training. And if you don't train, you're not going to be able to do that. And the spread and the capacity is not going to help you. Whereas if you train more with an AR and you have 30 different tries, well, you just have more options. Now, one of the last things we're going to talk about here, because we've already talked about that spread, is where spread can go wrong. Now, spread is usually a good thing, but in this case, not always. If you're talking about a home defense situation where that person might potentially have a hostage, and if they have a hostage in your house, guess what? You probably like that person. It's probably not the uncle you've been trying to kick out for weeks. It's probably going to be your kid or your wife, or in worst case scenario, maybe your dog. Now, if this asshole has a gun to Spike's head and you're trying to get him and not Spike, maybe you don't want that 5-inch spread. Maybe you want a very precise, accurate shot at close range, in which a rifle in particular is a very, very good choice for that. A lot of times people don't consider rifles for close range engagements, but if you're trying to hit a target that's this big while moving, while under stress, that single perfect round might be a great choice for that. So for hostage situations, a rifle is significantly better in my opinion. Now, a lot of you guys are going to say just offset, shoot up to the left or shoot up to the right, and at least half the pattern will get him. But do you really want to risk hitting Spike with one of those pellets? I don't think so. Now, the very last thing is a con, but it is a con of all platforms that I wanted to go over because I figured it would be in the comment section, and that is going to be overpenetration. I always hear about overpenetration with buckshot when it comes to a home defense situation, but I got to tell you guys, if you're using a caliber that's adequate for home defense, it is likely that is going to overpenetrate. If you miss your intended target, every single round that's capable of stopping a two-legged threat is also capable of going through drywall. So you have to plan accordingly. If you live in an apartment complex, you have to pick your zones of fire. You have to make sure that you are picking the situation in which you engage. So maybe you set up shop at the front of the hallway and you know that if you shoot and you're going to miss that target, it's going to go through into the other apartment. Well, maybe in that case, you have to go to a knee and aim up, or maybe you have to get a little elevated and aim down. Maybe you have to just shoot him in the pelvic girdle so that round goes through and goes downward as opposed to going into the next room. There's lots of ways to offset your shot, and it's your house after all, so you sort of get to pick the engagement depending on the situation. But I just wanted to say, yes, buckshot overpenetrates, and I hear a lot of people say go to number 4 buck, and that is a little bit better when it comes to drywall, but there's also other options, including frangible and hollow point ammunition when it comes to 9, and particularly 5.56 is a little misunderstood. Sometimes people say 5.56 will go through 20 walls, and sometimes they'll say it'll only go through 1, and that's generally because some of those people are using steel core penetrators, and some of those people are either using frangible or hollow points. So pick the right ammunition for you and your situation, and pick the right angle and the right engagement, and you shouldn't have any problems, but shit happens. What are you going to do? Now, that being said, is a shotgun a terrible home defense weapon? Absolutely not. If you train with it, and you are good with it, it is absolutely formidable. Probably one of the most formidable guns you can shoot. The average shots fired in a home defense situation is 1. The average percentage for fatalities on ER visits for shotgun to the torso is 95%, which means that it almost always takes 1 correct shot from a shotgun to end a life-threatening engagement, which means they are very, very useful. And can they be used in close quarters? They absolutely can be. The point of this video was to point out the shortcomings so you can train through them or decide to pick another gun. Because at the end of the day, a gun for home defense is a gun. If you gave me a Glock 34, if you gave me a 11.5 SBR, if you gave me a 20-inch M16, or if you gave me a 22-inch duck gun, I'm going to make it work. There's tactics, there's skills, and just train with your gun and you'll be just fine. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. Please support your local homeless shelters, and remember to recycle. I'll check you later.
You're such a dork.